Welcome back to Territory Wars Explained, a collaboration series from, of course, Skelturix, and speaking, yours truly, Nukin. So we're so happy to bring you another episode of TW Explained. Be sure to give us a like on this video if you love this content, and give us some feedback below. What do you like? What do you want to see more of? Because we're going to keep pumping out this TW content because we know that you guys are digging it. In today's episode, episode 4, we're going to be covering the bounty hunters. So let's just jump right into it because there's a bunch of stuff to showcase, and Skelly and I are super pumped to bring you some bounty hunter faction TW knowledge. Now, the bounty hunters are an amazing TW team, but you may not start to encounter them until you reach a higher GP bracket in TW. We believe you're going to start encountering these bounty hunters, usually placed on defense in the current meta, and maybe even multiple zones of bounty hunters placed on defense around the 160 million GP bracket or higher. You may see some beforehand, but definitely after this point, you're going to start seeing a lot of bounty hunters in TW. They have a difficulty level of farming around a hard difficulty because there's multiple characters that are still actually premium. Then there's a bunch of hard node bounty hunters as well. So they actually are difficult to farm, but their difficulty of defeating them is around a medium difficulty. So they could become trickier depending on the variant, but we'll talk about the best team in just a second. But real fast, we want to make sure that everyone is on the same page and either learns this for the first time or has a little bit of a refresher. The bounty hunters are the only team currently in TW that actually have 2 passive bonuses on the Jakku map. First off, since every bounty hunter is also a scoundrel, they're going to be capitalizing on a step ahead. A step ahead allows scoundrels to have 20% critical chance as long as they have some protection. Now, they don't have to have max protection. It could be just one single point, but they're going to have 20% crit if they have any. And then also, since they're definitely bounty hunters, they're going to have the wet work passive, which is going to be even stronger than that passive. Whenever a bounty hunter scores a critical hit, which they will do more often because of a step ahead, they're actually going to cleanse themselves of all debuffs, and they're also going to gain stacking 15% critical damage for the rest of the battle. So they're going to start hitting very, very hard, very quickly, especially if they do an AoE attack, for example. So because of that double bonus and a lot of the bounty hunter synergy, they're very deadly in TW. So there are a lot of bounty hunters out there now, and there used to be not so much, but with the bounty hunter reworks and all these new bounty hunters, and most of them have leadership abilities, who do you choose to lead the faction? And we have discussed this, Skelly and I, and we have come to the conclusion that there's really only 2 really good bounty hunter leaders. And for TW, we're recommending a Bossk leadership. Now, Bossk is an amazing bounty hunter, and he can be run as a 5th on another bounty hunter squad, but his leadership is also very good. It's on the hunt. Now, this leadership ability is going to give bounty hunters extra durability, tenacity, sustain, and also it's an easy contract to complete even when the AI is under control, and it's a great reward as well. 50 flat speed to each bounty hunter ally. That's like adding 2 speed arrows almost onto every single bounty hunter on your team, so it's very good. Now, he has 2 Zetas, and we're definitely recommending putting a Zeta on both the leadership ability and his unique. Now, the unique is going to allow him to actually regain taunt, kind of like the Houndstooth ship when he loses taunt. There's a conditional element, but it's not too hard to fulfill, and so you're going to actually have a Bossk and be stuck hitting that Bossk when you're attacking it on offense quite often. So it's quite annoying when you have a Zeta on that unique. So that's going to make the bounty hunter team very difficult to defeat, and that's what you're looking for when you place a team on defense. Modding wise, you're going to want to actually put speed and tenacity mods on Bossk. You're going to want to have either 3 different tenacity 2-piece sets, so 6 tenacity mods in total, or a speed set with a 2-piece tenacity set and a tenacity cross. You want also protection primaries on the circle and the triangle, and you just want this guy to go very quickly so he can get that taunt up right away. Moving on from the tank from the team, let's talk about who's next up, and that is Dengar. Dengar is an attacker. He's very durable, and he's actually going to have 1 Zeta, but you do not need to Zeta this ability. It is not required. Modding wise, you're going to want to give this guy 3 2-piece critical chance sets. That's 6 critical chance mods. You want to give him a tenacity cross, and you want him to be able to crit because he has a lot of synergy when he does crit. Also, he has a lot of AoE abilities and assist mechanics, so the more opportunities he has to attack, he's going to usually crit, and then he's going to stack up that critical damage. And you may wonder why sometimes a Dengar out of nowhere can one-shot one of your characters, and that is the TW bonus coming into play with Dengar. So not too much to add about Dengar. He's a very good bounty hunter. Let's move on to the next bounty hunter, Boba Fett. So Boba Fett is definitely one of the fan favorites, and he also has a Zeta ability. He's an attacker, and you're going to actually not need to give him a Zeta as well. It's going to be optional, but it will make the team a little bit more difficult to take out, because when he revives, he's going to actually have more than just his health pool, so that's going to be nice. Modding wise, you definitely want to give this guy a critical damage set, so 4 critical damage mods and a 2-piece critical chance set. He's going to want to include offense secondaries on his mods and also a tenacity cross. If you're not going to do a tenacity cross, you could do potency or offense. It kind of is going to be up to you and what kind of secondaries you have on your mods, and you're going to want to actually make sure that this guy is going to go fairly quickly, because you do want him to get off his abilities right after Bossk gets his taunt up, because if you're able to get Bossk taunt up very quickly and then ability block the enemy side, they're not going to be able to dispel that taunt, and they're going to have a very difficult time taking out your team. Rounding off the bounty hunter team, next up we have Grito, a squishy bounty hunter attacker, and potentially he shot first. We may never know, but jokes aside, he has 1 Zeta ability, and it's not required. It's an optional Zeta, but it definitely will make your bounty hunter team more difficult to take out. When you put a Zeta on that ability, it's going to add a irresistible stun, which is always good in more of a PvP-like environment, so that's going to be good. Modding wise, you want to give him a speed set, which is actually different than the Sith raid where you would give him a critical damage set, and this is because he is squishy, so you do want him to go first, or at least get something off before he gets bursted down. And also, the quicker he can go, he can supply the team with critical chance up, which is going to allow the rest of the bounty hunters to more effectively crit and then get that stacking critical damage going. So even if they take him out first, if he's done his job and given the team critical chance up and at least landed 1 dispel irresistible stun, he may have already done all that he needs to do, which is going to be great. And then if he's not taken out, he is actually very deadly, because he has the opportunity to basically annihilate a character or almost take a character out. He has a % chance to continue to attack every single time he crits, so that's going to be very powerful, especially in TW. Lastly, Skelly and I are recommending one more character to wrap up this team, and that is B2 Super Battle Droid. And you may ask, why are we recommending a droid non-taunting tank? And we'll tell you why. Well, B2 Super Battle Droid is a counter to one of the soft counters of the bounty hunters. One of the soft counters is the Imperial Troopers. There are other teams as well, and one of the things that those counter teams try to do is have a bunch of buff synergy. They try to hide behind tanks and do cheese strats, and B2 will have none of that, so that is why. B2 Super Battle Droid doesn't have any Zetas, so we don't have any recommendations there. Modding wise, you want B2 to actually have a lot of potency and tenacity. So if he gets dazed or stunned or shocked, for example, that is no good. He'll prevent his turn meter generation when other allies are attacked. So you want to have lots of tenacity. You also want a ton of potency to make sure that you're applying that buff immunity, which is also very important on top of that AoE dispel. Now, this is a character that is also gear dependent as well. So if you have a gear 12 B2 super battle droid, then you should actually put an accuracy arrow on B2. But if he's under geared, we're talking maybe gear 11 or gear 10, starting around there and below, you're going to want to put a protection arrow on B2. So keep that in mind. Now, you're striving for 80% tenacity and potency, and if you can get up to 100% potency and tenacity, even better, but that's going to require some really good golden mods. Speed is not an issue here for B2 Super Battle Droid. So what happens if your options are limited, you don't have a counter to a counter, and you want to run a full bounty hunter team, or maybe you do have some of these characters, but you're placing them in other areas and you're stretched too thin? Well, if you're going to run a full bounty hunter team, the best replacement to round off the bounty hunter team is going to be Embo. He's great. He has a basic attack that can dispel. He also does a lot of damage, and he has some self-supporting capability, so that's going to be a very good option and sort of a soft counter to some of the other soft counters. Also, if you're going to run some of the counters to the counters and you don't have a B2, for example, you can run other options as well. There's going to be, of course, Ness. Ness works almost anywhere, and she will work with the bounty hunters as well. She will prevent some of those counters. You can also run Zeta Barris, and you can also run an auto taunter, which can actually delay the capabilities of getting to your Bossk, and then Bossk will get to go, and once his taunt's up, it's kind of game over from there most of the time. So an auto taunter like Shore Trooper or L3 will also be an effective substitution. So now it's time to talk about how you can take out the bounty hunters if you run across them on TW Offense Day. How do you counter the bounty hunters efficiently and effectively? So first off, let's talk about if you run across a full pure bounty hunter team, that's 5 different bounty hunters with a Bossk leadership, what do you do? One of the go-tos in this situation is the Imperial Troopers with Ranged Trooper. Even if he's not 7 stars, throw him in on the team because there's a lot more damage potential when he's on this team. First off, you need to look at your Colonel Stark. You want to make him quick, and then you want to compare that speed to the enemy Bossk. Now, don't forget to factor in General Veers' bonus flat speed to Imperial Troopers as well, and then you can add that to your Colonel Stark speed. So once you've figured that out, if your Colonel Stark is going to go first, he's going to be able to use his first special, which will provide turn meter to the rest of the Imperial Troopers. And then if the rest of your Imperial Troopers are not incredibly slow, your entire team should go first before the enemy Bossk. And then if you have enough damage potential, if you've modded your Imperial Troopers for damage, we're talking critical damage mods, offense secondaries, critical chance, etc., there should be enough damage output to burst down one of the bounty hunters before Bossk gets his taunt off. And then once that happens, it's basically momentum train to the end, and you can quickly end the battle with a 20 banner victory. For our second counter, we have the CLS 2.0 Rebel Squad with the recent legendary OT Chewbacca. This OT Chewbacca legendary has brought the rebels up in strength and power level, and if you remember at the beginning of TW, CLS was placed on defense. Now we're really kind of finding that they're actually still being used on offense even with this legendary. This team has enough potential to take out a bounty hunter squad. The trick is for Han Solo to make sure that he's stunning an important tune at the very beginning. For example, if there was an enemy nest, definitely stun that nest right away. And the trick is to make sure that you can take out one character, and make sure if you're going to take out a character first, that the most important character, or at least second, would be Boba Fett, because with this squad there are so many buffs from Chirrut, those heal over times, that Boba Fett will just go to town when he doesn't execute and take out one of your rebels. So be very cautious of Boba Fett. Once you've taken out Boba Fett though, it should be an easy victory from there because the bounty hunters won't have enough damage potential or controlling capabilities to regain control of the match. Now let's move into our third counter, and we're going to start facing off against some teams that are even more difficult to take out. When a bounty hunter team has a counter to a counter as a fifth character, whether that's Barriss, B2 Super Battle Droid, Nest, L3, another auto taunter, etc. There's a bunch of different combinations actually. The list goes on from there. And the goal here is to take in a stronger squad. You can't bring in the Imperial Troopers here. Potentially, if there's a B2, you can, but they have to be completely maxed out and very well modded. Otherwise, you're going to have to take a stronger meta team. The trick here is to use JTR and continually use her second special on Bossk. If you've modded her with enough speed and your BB-8 goes before anyone because of that unique extra turn meter boost, and BB-8 is quite fast, he will use his first special, which will grant enough turn meter for JTR to actually go right after and get that ability off her second special, which will prevent Bossk from ever taunting. And you just continue to do that and remove his turn meter, etc. And then from there you can start to pick off some of the extra bounty hunters. My recommendation, if there's a B2, is just to take him out because you don't want any of your awesome buffs to be dispelled, and also to make sure you take out Boba Fett ASAP as well, just to make sure that your race scavenger doesn't randomly get executed out of the blue. For our fourth and final counter, we have the Bastila Jedi team, and this is specifically to counter any sort of Jango Fett leaderships you may run across in TW with the bounty hunters. Now, Bossk is amazing on any bounty hunter squad, and Jango Fett has scoundrel bonuses in his leadership as well. So we talked about how you may see Nest under a Bossk lead bounty hunter team. She's even better under a Jango Fett leadership. So with this squad, it can be very deadly, but the trick here is to make sure that you're actually not going to allow him to ever get the contract up, because they need to damage debuffed enemies. But the beauty about Bastila lead is that they can't get debuffed until that sort of bonus purple protection has been whittled down, and by then the battle is pretty much already over. So definitely try out a Bastila Jedi team. Split up your Jedi. You don't need to put Bastila on your Revan team, or you may not even have a Revan. So this is going to be a solid counter for when you run across this in TW. As we begin to wind down here, Skelly and I definitely want to make sure that you guys know that this is not the end all be all. There are definitely other teams that can also work, but they're going to be a little bit less efficient. And of course, the strongest meta teams on the arena PvP scene are definitely going to be able to take out the bounty hunters, because the bounty hunters are definitely not the very strongest team on the block. And with that, that wraps up our fourth episode where we covered the bounty hunters in our Territory Wars Explained series. Stay tuned. Tomorrow we're going to be covering the Sith, so make sure to subscribe and come back. Give us a like, throw us a comment down there. Remember, next week we'll be doing videos on my channel. We'll also be covering some ships, so that should be exciting. So hopefully you guys all enjoy that. So we'll see you all in our next TW Explained video. Cheers.